Welcome back. If this is your first time, you're welcome. I just want to let everybody know that the webinar is recorded. So we will send the recording out to everyone we have on our mailing list, inshallah, after this. Yeah, of course, you come on or anything like that. As we usually do, Jubril is going to speak for maybe 45 minutes, and then we'll have an opportunity for people to ask questions afterwards. Now, there's a chat box and there's a Q&A box. We don't take questions from the chat box because it's distracting to look at both. So please make sure you use the Q&A box if you really want your question to be answered. Also, you can ask via audio. You just have to use the that you can answer directly. Anyone who's not familiar with the Tahara Collective, we are an organization that creates a safe platform for Muslims and non-Muslims to learn about Islam, connect, create community. And yeah, we have a come as you are policy, so everyone is welcome. We're curious, if you're learning, if you're learned, yeah, it's an open space for everyone. I think this Ramadan has been particularly amazing. We've gotten to do so many sessions on Zoom. For everyone who has joined us, information with people, thank you so much. We've been able to build a really, really beautiful community, and I'm actually excited to see how we sustain that for Ramadan. We'll just give it another minute or so and then let Jubril take off. Jubril is going to be helping us, inshallah, to think about ways that we can continue to be Ramadan. I know for most of us, Ramadan is a time where we're able to be more reflective, or to perform more acts of ibadah, and immediately by some time there's any decline. But it doesn't have to be. So Jubril is going to help us figure out how we can maintain at least a good degree of the momentum that we gain in time. We have 52 participants on now. So I think actually now it's 62. So I think it's a great number for us to start with. So that's enough from me. Jubril, I will let you take it away.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من نفخه ونفثه وهمزه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده سيدنا ونبينا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي رب أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإني من المسلمين وبعد. So, Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you very much Tahara Collective as a whole, all the people who work in the background to make this happen, all of the people who, who have been working in the background all these years to gather people together with this, what I call an amazing come as you are policy, because that's how Allah calls us all. Allah says, come as you are, it's for Allah to rectify us and not, just come as you are. And when you're with Allah, He will then be the one that will rectify us. May Allah rectify us all. And yeah, may Allah reward you all for creating this forum, for allowing people to come together for many, many reasons, whether it's the economic policies that you do, or the microloan and the charitable activities. May Allah reward you all immensely for it. And I'm honored to be part of a group like this, because yeah, for Allah to have invited, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have to gather people who are sincere in doing things for His sake. It's a very rare group, and may Allah continue to raise you all in all that is good. So the topic for today is consistency, and in the Arabic language, the word for consistency is istiqama. Istiqama comes from the root word qama. Qama literally means to stand straight, okay? Or to be qama, if you say qama bi, it means someone who does something as a responsibility, right? So qama bi ahlihi. You know, he stands by his family, for example, or he takes care of all the responsibility for his family. So istiqama is to seek to be upright. Okay, so consistency, from the linguistic analysis of it, you're really seeking to be upright, to be firm, to be straight, and you know, to be upright in everything that you do. It's such an important status. It's actually a maqam. If you look at it from a spiritual perspective, it's a maqam of God's friends. It's a status that God puts his friends in. And that's why some of the scholars have said that if you want to know God's friends, look at their consistency in their worship. That's why they said, khairul karama al-istiqama. The best miracle you can see in the hands of God's friends is their consistency in their worship, is their consistency in their drawing closer to Allah. They're not the kind of people that when they attain a type of nearness to Allah, then they drop all the righteous actions that they used to do that caused them to attain that nearness to Allah. Junaid was once asked, that with all of the knowledge that you have, how come you're still doing a lot of extra adhkar? All this? He said, nobody drops the things that allow them to attain nearness to their beloved, that cause them to arrive at a station of being closer to their Lord. So if something caused you to draw closer to God, why drop it when you're now close to God? You know that with God, if God is the goal, then there is always increase. You know, if God is the goal, waladayna mazid, Allah said, you know, with God, you know, there's a lot more, you know, there's a lot more, there's always increase, you know. So when you understand that, then you understand that, subhanAllah, this is a great thing to aspire for. This is an amazing, amazing trait to seek for, to seek it. And, you know, in the hadith in Muslim, Sufyan ibn Abdullah said, I once said to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, give me an advice in Islam which I cannot ask anybody else but you, right? Something which, if I get it, I know that, right, this is something only you can give this kind of advice, right? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Qul amantu billah thumma istaqim." Said, say, I believe in God, and then be consistent, and then hold firm, and then, you know, have this istiqama. So the first part is very, very important. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, just gave him a direction. He gave him a focal point. He didn't say, focus on doing these actions. No. The first thing, the first important part is your focus, is where you are heading to, you know, who you are focused on. And I always say to people, whatever you focus on grows in you. Let's say I'm in a room now, okay? I'm in a room, there's so many things around this room, and there happens to just be a small ant, right? And if I choose to focus on that ant, then all of a sudden that ant's significance grows in my heart, right? That happens, you know, sometimes you're in a room and then there's a small fly. If you choose to focus on that small fly, all of a sudden you start being uncomfortable. You start, you know, you start noticing that fly. Whereas if you totally change your focus and put your focus on something else, that thing that you put your focus on grows in your heart. So what then happens when you put your focus on the greatest? Allahu Akbar, right? Al-Kabir. What happens if that becomes your focus? Then you know, by definition, because Allah is limitless, your heart will continue to expand and grow, okay? And it will continue, and there will be no end to such an expansion, right? So that is the reality of making God your focus. And if you make God your focus, then be consistent, persevere. Because you will have times where you'll be able to do good actions. Remember, God is still the focus. It's not you. And there will be times when you might fall short. Remember, Allahu Akbar. Focus on God, right? So that's it's very, very important. Now, the other thing to look at in this topic of consistency is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made every single believing Muslim ask for consistency, ask for guidance at least 17 times a day. In Surah Al-Fatiha, we all start by saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We start with God's name. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Then you praise God. All praise from all types of praise, open, in secret, known praise, unknown praise, statements of speech, statements of state, statements of being, all types of praise belongs to God, the Lord of the worlds. Then you praise God again, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most beneficent, the most merciful, Master of the day of judgment. Then you express your relationship with Him. Only you do I worship, and only you do I ask for help. All of these preambles just to do what? To ask God, please guide me to this path of consistency. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Please guide us to this path of consistency. Sirat al-mustaqim. You see, mustaqim is the same part, is the same root word of istiqama. So you're asking God, God told us this is an adab of making dua, right? You first praise God, and then you establish a relationship with God. You make sure you realize that you are the slave and He is the Lord, and then you ask, right? Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. You, every Muslim, on a daily basis, ask God, please God, guide us to this consistent straight path. Okay, so that shows how important it is. In fact, that's the main dua that Allah has made compulsory on every Muslim to ask for. Right? It's in Surah Al-Fatiha. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Please guide us to this straight path. Please guide us to this consistent path. Please guide us to this path. Okay? So that shows how important this path is. Now, in the past 30 days, we've been fasting, right? Because Allah has asked us to fast. We've been trying to do righteous actions because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has urged us to do a lot of righteous actions. And as a result of obeying Allah and obeying the Messenger of Allah, right? That's what we've done. We've obeyed Allah's commandment to the best of our ability, and we've obeyed the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's advice to the best of our ability, right? And as a result of that, we now feel, oh my God, this is so amazing. This is so good. This is so, we've really, really felt something good through this, right? Then Ramadan is about to leave us now as a month. There are two types of people, right? There are the general masses, those who their main importance is linked to place and time. And then there are the special people who place and time honors them. I'll repeat that again. There are the general masses, where we attach almost all our importance to just things to do with place and time. But there are some special people of God who place and time honors them. So why do we love Medina? Fihi Rasulullah. In it is the Messenger of Allah. Why do we love Mecca? Right? In it is a house of Allah built by who? Built by the friend of God and His Son. Right? And some of the scholars also say, of course, in that place are buried Hajar and Ismail were buried there as well. Right? Why is Masjid al-Aqsa blessed? Allah says, Alladhi barakna hawlah. Why is blessed? Because there are some of the scholars in Tabari, you read it, that they said that the Masjid al-Aqsa around it, there are many, many prophets of God buried there, that are placed there. Right? So there are some people who place and time honors them. Right? So we should try to realize that Allah wants us to be people that focus on Him alone. And if He is our main focus, then we will be people eventually that at some point, place or time will honor us. As opposed to, of course, honoring things that Allah has asked you to honor, places and time that Allah has asked you to honor. If you do it recognizing that it's done only and mainly for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not for anything else. Okay, so with Ramadan now departing, there are some people that feel, oh my God, this time is about to leave me. What's going to happen? How do I maintain what I attained in this special month. Well, just do what you used to do then, right? Do what you, in this month, number one, on a practical level, you reduced your food and eating, right? What does that mean? You starved your nafs, your ego. The ego, which is the house of desires, you contained it. You didn't give it everything it wanted. That sweets, that chocolate, that, all of those things, you constrained it. And you forced it to worship its Lord. You said, no, Allah is your Lord. Focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you did that, right, what happened when you did that? When you did that, you saw that, oh my God, there is something amazing that comes out of this, right? When you focus and make Allah, when you constrain your nafs, you see that the nafs has many stages, right? You see that when you move your nafs to a state where it's remembering Allah, it finds tranquility, right? And there is even more beyond that, okay? So when you recognize that and you realize that, you go, oh my God, if you repeat, Imam Ghazali considers spirituality a science, which is, it's something that's tried and tested and repeatable and will lead to the same consequences. Okay, it's an experience, it's tried and tested by people of the past. It's repeatable. If you do the same thing now, you'll get the same result, and you'll get the same result, right? So if you, outside Ramadan, starve your nafs, right? And then try as much as possible to increase or maintain the acts of worship that you did in Ramadan, then Allah will still draw you closer to Him. Why? Because the God of Ramadan is the God of Shawwal, right? And the God of all of the months that will come afterwards. Allah has not changed at all. Allah is not, Allah is not in time. He created time. Time is one of His creations. So Allah doesn't change with time. Allah is still Allah. Okay? So when your focus is Allah, if you want to then consistently maintain what you had tasted in Ramadan, then do the same thing in Ramadan. Okay? So the first thing to then what are the real practical steps we can do to make sure that we try to attain this? Number one, what we've actually done by coming to a session like this, I see it as you have intended somehow to want to attain the status. So intention is core. But before we get to intention, maybe I should just define what can we mean by consistency? Okay, consistency really is in three things. One, consistency in keeping away from every single thing that God has asked you to keep away from, and second thing, consistency in doing what God has asked you to do. And the key point in all of these two, the third part, is consistency of your focus on God and God alone, right? And if you attain the third level through the first two, trying with the first two, you will realize that, oh my God, God is truly great, because God Himself will show you His signs in everything around you and in your own selves. Allah says, "Sanurihim ayatina fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim hatta yatabayyana lahum annahu al-haqq." Right? Allah said in Surah, it's the last surah of, I've forgotten the surah now, but it's the last verse of the surah. But if I remember it, I'll go back to it. But in that verse, Allah says, we will show them our signs in the horizons and in their own selves until it's clear to them that it is the truth, that Allah is Al-Haq, right? So Allah is promising that He will show us our own signs if we focus on Him, right? He will show us our own signs. So that's what Istiqama is in those three things. Now, intention of how this is the first thing you do if you want to attain Istiqama. You intend for it, and when it comes to intention, right, you can intend to either just at least fulfill your obligations, right? So whatever Allah has asked you to do, you do, and not extra. And whatever He's asked you to keep away from, you keep away from, right? Or you can intend for something higher than that, which is to fulfill God's obligations and to be able to do extras, right? So to do what Allah has asked you to do, but to be someone of nafila, to be someone that does those extra acts of worship that really mandates God's love for you. Okay? And then there's the highest intention, where you just intend that your whole life is for God's service. And that's the peak of intention. And God's service is in serving his creation with whatever he has given you, and, being dutiful to God. Okay, of course, being dutiful to God comes first, and through that, serving his creation with whatever God has given you and guiding them back to him to the best of your ability. Okay, so that highest goal is what, this is the position of the prophets and the saints and the martyrs and the righteous one. As Allah told Muhammad to say in Surah Al-A'raf, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ أَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. It says, Allah says, tell them, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي, tell them that indeed my prayer, وَنُسُكِي, and my sacrifice, وَمَحْيَايَ, and my living, وَمَمَاتِي, and my dying, لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. All of this is for Allah, the Lord of the world. How? لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ, with no partners whatsoever. Right? And that's a maqam that is khas. This is a station of those who truly know God. They don't attribute anything other than God to anything. Okay? La sharika la wa bidhalika umirt, and that's what I was commanded to do, and I'm the first of the believers. So when you understand this, that you first start with making the intention, and I encourage us all to make the intention, right? And the believer, one of the secrets of why God gives us eternity in paradise, some of the scholars say, is because the believers have already intended that if God were to make them live forever, they would worship God forever. So Allah gave them eternal paradise because of their eternal intention. And your intention, so you can also make the intention now that, Ya Rabb, please do not make Ramadan the end of our being close to you. Intend that after Ramadan, you will still try to be close to Allah, and you will still make sure that everything that you do is going to be for Allah's sake. And if you make that intention, then that next part of it comes, which is you pray for it. Okay? Ask God. You see, as I said earlier, Allah himself taught us to ask him for istiqama. Okay? And when you want something from God, just ask Allah. Allah says, وَاسْأَلُ اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Ask God from his bounties. Allah is Kareem. If only you knew how generous God is, you will not hold back in asking. If only you knew how generous and what he has, whatever you might want in this world, whatever you might want, it's not up to a drop in the ocean of God's generosity. And it won't take anything from God's bounties. So don't hold back in asking him. Just ask, ask, ask. And especially when it comes to consistency, ask Allah to make your whole life just for him. Ask Allah to allow you to live a whole life dedicated to him, right? And see what God then does, And I can tell you from my own direct experience that, subhanAllah, I had a very small intention in this Ramadan. At the beginning of Ramadan, I had no clue about most of the different circles that I would end up having to, be part of, right? But when Allah sees that you have a small intention that is only for him, he will use you as he sees fit, right? So I advise everyone and myself, make dua, have a sound intention, and follow your intention with actions, okay? Follow your intention with actions. So what are the kind of actions that we should do? We've already spoken about trying to run away from everything that's incorrect, that is haram. Okay, try your best, right? And Allah will reward you based on your efforts. Okay, we've already spoken about, we also try your best to do everything that Allah has asked you to do. And Allah would only judge you on this part to the best of your ability. Allah will judge you based on your effort. He knows what he has created. He knows your capability. He knows what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. So, and Allah never places a burden upon his soul greater than which it can bear. Okay? So try with small, consistent acts of worship. right? Start with what Allah has made compulsory upon you. Don't give that up in any way, shape, or form. Your salah and the 5 daily prayers at their time. If you struggle with this, ask God for help. I have been in a situation in the past where I struggled with certain acts of worship. And I said, Ya Rabb, I'm not going to give up, but please help. I need your help here. And if you do that and you're sincere, I can tell you for a fact, Allah will definitely help you and support you, right? That's His promise. Allah never leaves people who call Him. فَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. Right? Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, when my servant asks of me, tell them I'm near. I answer the call of, when my servant asks of me, He didn't say tell them I'm near, He says I'm near. I answer the call of everyone that calls when they call me. Okay? So do small, regular, consistent acts of worship, daily acts of worship. Okay? And don't you dare underestimate any good deed or any consistent act of worship or any act of worship, no matter how small. Don't you dare think that because, I was only able to do this. No, Allah, one of His names is Ash-Shakur, is the one that He named Himself, the one that is grateful, the one that appreciates things. It means that Allah would appreciate things from you that nobody else would even accept, right? If you tell someone, I wanted to give you 10,000 pounds, but I wasn't able to give you, they were like, why are you telling me that? Allah would accept your intentions even if you don't fulfill it, right? That's how Shakur He is. Your intention to do good, He will accept that. So if you sit down in this session now, you think, oh Allah, please, you know where I am right now. You know where I want to be. I really intend to be close to you. Allah is Shakur. He will already write that down as a good deed for you. Okay? So don't you dare underestimate any good deed. Prophet Muhammad said, "La tahqiranna min al-ma'ruf shay'an." Right? Do not dare underestimate any good deed. At the time when Prophet Muhammad was gathering ammunition for one of the battles, some of the companions came and they came with 2 or 3 dates. The hypocrites were laughing at them, thinking, of all the things we were talking about, you're given 1 or 2 dates. The Prophet Muhammad did not return what these people gave. He accepted it because he knows he is the servant, is Abdul Shakur. He is the servant of the one who is eternally grateful for everything that you do. And one of the irony about Allah's name as Shakur is Allah, everything that you can give or you can do for Allah is because of what He Himself has given you. So isn't it ironic that He gives you all of these things and then He rewards you for doing it in the way that He's pleased with? I always say, Allah says, "Lillahi ma fis samawati ma fil ard." To Allah belongs everything in the heavens and the earth. And then He says, "Man alladhi yuqridu Allah qardan hasan." Who is it that will give God a good loan? That's the peak of irony. He owns it, He gives it to you for a short time, and then He's asking you to loan it to Him, and then He will give you more back, right? Some of the scholars say the reason why usury is impermissible is because only Allah can give it properly, right? So don't underestimate any righteous action. Just continue giving, just continue doing, just continue, and don't forget, you have a Lord that has named Himself Ash-Shakur. He will appreciate every single thing. The other thing to note is companionship, suhbah, okay? Companionship, good companionship makes a huge difference. I know that one of the things Allah has taught us in this Ramadan, because so many of us, before this Ramadan, we're thinking to ourselves, what is Ramadan going to be without Taraweeh, right? So Allah has shown us this, yes, He can still give us enormous good while we're still alone, right? But we know for a fact that many things that we do in Islam, if you do it with a group, there's more barakah. Like your prayer, the prayer of Jama'ah is more than the one who does it alone, right? So companionship is very important in being consistent in your worship. And the Prophet Muhammad said, "Al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, falyanzur ahadukum man yukhalil." He said, a person will be on the religion of his friend. So let each one of you watch who he or she befriends. Okay? Whoever you deem you admit into your inner circle, there will be osmosis going on. You will take from them, they will take from you. Right? So if you are somebody that you have friends that all they call you to is immoral actions, or to call you to answer to the base of your desires, right? To let's just, that's our love, oh, I'm there, all this, whatever. If that's all their friendship is useful for, then don't be surprised if that's where your heart starts to incline towards, right? So the Prophet Muhammad also gave the analogy of good companionship like someone that goes into a perfume shop. Okay, if you go into a perfume shop, he said the similitude of good companionship is like someone that goes into a perfume shop. When he goes into the perfume shop, he smells beautiful fragrances, and some of the perfume remains on his body, on his clothes afterwards. So even when he leaves that companionship, that good smell, that good smell still stays on him, right? That's what good companionship is. And he also said the similitude of bad companionship is like someone that goes to a blacksmith's shop, right? The smell is foul around you, and your clothes might become dirty or even torn, right? By being in the place like that. So don't think that, you can end up, you can somewhat, if you're in a company that is calling you to God, that is calling you to righteousness, that is calling you to goodness, right? Then that companionship will be good for you and you'll be increased by it. And if you're in a companionship or in a company that is always calling you to the base activities, to drinking alcohol, to doing all of these things that would veil you from God, then don't be surprised if after Ramadan you go back to this and you end up being veiled, or you end up being distracted from God. And one of the verses in the Quran, I think in Surah Al-Kuburat, in Surah Al-Infitar, that Allah asks a very rhetorical question. He says, Ya ayyuhal insanu, ma gharraka bi rabbika al-kareem. O mankind, what is it that has veiled you, that has distracted you, that has deluded you from your immensely generous Lord, right? A Lord that is so close to you, that is closer to you than your own jugular vein. How can you be distracted or deluded from such a Lord? Okay, so good companionship helps, and this is one of the reasons why you have all of these spiritual circles, because they see that when people who are journeying in the same direction meet together, something good comes out of that. Okay, the other thing to look at and to focus on is to have circles or sessions of knowledge, right? Have a session once a week where you listen to something or you learn from someone, okay? Back in the 90s, in the late 90s, I used to remember that I would sit down regularly and I would listen to a tape of, back then it was Hamza Yusuf's tape and some of the other scholars, Hamza Yusuf, Abdul Hakim Murad, I used to listen to these scholars and I would make notes. I would literally sit down in front of the radio cassettes then, and I would be making notes of everything I would learn as if I was in front of them, right? If you are not able to access a scholar specifically, then we have, the internet that is filled with many, many scholars' lectures. Sit down at least once a week, learn from them. And if you're able to find a teacher, then even better. Because when you sit in front of a teacher, not only do you learn from their knowledge, you learn from their adab, from their mannerism. And adab is so important when it comes to, good manners. Etiquette is so important when it comes to your journey towards God. Imam Malik, whenever his mom would get him ready for his teacher, when he was young, it was only 7 or so. Imam Malik, when his mom would tie his turban for him, he would tell him, learn from your teacher's manners before you learn from his knowledge. What an amazing one, right? So good having a circle of knowledge or a session of knowledge once a week is a way of maintaining consistency in your journey with God. And as I said, finally, is to look at in Ramadan, our human body is body, spirit, and then you have your nafs, right? Your body, which is just for this world, and then your ruh, which is just for God, right? And then you have your nafs, your body of your house of desires, which allows these two to be in the same place, in the same body, right? So this house of desires, in Ramadan, you tamed it. you didn't give it everything it wanted. You know, you'll be fasting, and then you see something that's nice and chocolate, you go, no, Allahu Akbar, you leave that thing, right? Allah is more important, you're fasting, you leave that thing, right? That ability to tame your nafs, if you continue with that and keep the focus on your ruh after Ramadan, then you will attain numerous blessings after Ramadan. Then you'll be able to be consistent. So don't leave Ramadan and then go back to 3 to 4 times meal a day. Try to restrict your meal to once or twice a day, right? And try to starve this nafs, this ego, and don't give it everything it wants. One of the scholars, Imam Busayri, in Qasida Burda, he said, وَخَالِفِ النَّفْسَ وَالشَّيْطَانَ وَعَصِيهِمَا وَإِنْ هُمَا مَحَضَاكَ النُّصْحَ فَاتَّهِمِ. He said, go against your ego and Satan and disobey both of them. Even when they seem to be giving you good advice, don't listen, right? Don't listen. Call them liars and just don't listen. So being able to tame your nafs, your ego, is one of the things that you're trying to do in Ramadan. And you're aided in doing that through reducing what you eat and drink. Well, after Ramadan, if you reduce what you eat and drink, that would help a lot as well. Also, so you not only did you reduce what you ate and drank, you filled that cup with remembrance of God. You read the Quran, you attended circles like this where you learned something, and it made you, your ruh was activated, right? Your ruh was reinvigorated, right? Your spirit was rekindled, and it felt good, right? So don't lose those things afterwards. Still, there are many, people, may Allah give us all long lives. The people you learned from in Ramadan, they're still going to be alive after Ramadan, right? The Quran is still there after Ramadan. Is a book revealed in Ramadan, but it's not just for Ramadan, okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is still your sole focus, is still the Lord of Shawwal. So when Ramadan goes, Allah is still Akbar, right? Allah is still there. So don't lose focus on God. Don't lose focus on the fact that, yes, Ramadan is a booster month, right? That Allah has honored it, so you honored it, and then you're boosted. But if you do all of these things we've mentioned, you pray for God to grant you consistency. You intend that after Ramadan, Ya Rabb, I intend to really make my whole life just for you, right? And then you start with small, consistent actions that you do once a week, once or twice a day, all these extras on top of the things that Allah has made compulsory upon you. You look for good companionship, good people that would remind you of this purpose, and be around these good companionship, and you will be elevated with them. And you have a circle of knowledge that you attend where you learn something on a weekly basis at least. And then, of course, over time, you shift the pendulum, or you keep the pendulum towards the ruh. They swing, that your heart is, you're still inclined towards your ruh, your spirit, right? As opposed to towards your body, your nafs. The body, as you've seen in Ramadan, can survive with minimum requirements, right? It can survive with minimum maintenance. So if that's the reality, then don't overfeed it after Ramadan. Don't give it more than what it needs after Ramadan, okay? And if you then happen to be someone that, yes, maybe that part might be difficult for you, then I encourage you that whenever you eat, make it a point of duty to do 2 things. One, you show immense gratitude for that food, right? You say, Alhamdulillah, and mean it, right? Mean it. And 2, make an intention after eating that, Ya Rabb, the energy, the nutrition that I've just gained from this food, I want to use it to serve you. Help me to find a way that's easy for me to use this energy to serve you. And please, I don't want to use this energy to disobey you. So help me to use this energy, this newly found energy and strength after eating, to be able to use it in a way that pleases you, not in a way that displeases you. So may Allah give us all certainty. May Allah give us all consistency, and may Allah allow us all to be consistent in our focus on Him after Ramadan. Allahumma jamilna bil afiyati was salamah وحققنا بالمعرفة والتقوى والاستقامة. Oh Allah, beautify us with good health and safety and security, and make us able to realize the essence of gnosis, knowing you, marifat wa taqwa, and make us able to realize the meaning of taqwa, being conscious of you, and istiqama, and being able to be consistent in our journey towards you. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Jubril. I think one of your key takeaways this Ramadan has been being concise, because you really hit the mark. So well done. Thank you so much. That was really, really helpful. And I just want to go through a couple of things that you said that I found particularly impactful. Is it clear? Am I coming through clearly?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Okay. So I think the first thing that was, most important is actually just seeking Allah's help in our consistency. I think a lot of times we just put it on ourselves and beat ourselves up for being perfect after Ramadan, but we actually need Allah's help, and Allah is constantly telling us to reach out to Him for that help. So asking Allah for help is a very significant thing for us to do. Also narrowing our focus on progress that we've made and narrowing our focus on things that we are able to consistently keep up, as opposed to focusing on what we're not doing. Another thing you mentioned, and not underestimating our good deeds and saying, oh, well, all I managed to do is this or that. Every little do is appreciated by Allah. So just finding any of your good deeds and being consistent in them is important. And also having tawakkul in that process, and just trusting that Allah can see your efforts no matter how minimal, and that they're appreciated. One of the other things that was really striking was about good companionship, which is exactly what we tried to create in Tahara, is a place where I found that a lot of us had friends, and our closest friends were with people that were not Muslim at all, and you would connect at a very deep level with people, and it didn't involve the deen at all. I think it's really important, we have found, to find that community, a place where you can come together with Muslim brothers and sisters and just share in life, share in your spirituality. And that's the really important way that you can be consistent, because you have those constant reminders from your good companion. One of the things you said that was interesting as well was paying attention to your adab, and paying attention to that which is your manners, which is something that I've never specifically considered. If you focus on your good manners, that's also part of worship. We have managed throughout Ramadan to take egos, or our house of desires, as you refer to it, and just being conscious of that as we go into the other months of the year, that you've had the ability to do this thing for 30 days. So, some element of it, we hold on to that through the rest of the month. And the very last thing that I took note of was carrying over the gratitude from iftar specifically, and that gratitude for sustenance, for your meals, just being grateful for the energy that they provide. So those were some things that, for anyone who missed from the beginning, those are some things that I picked up and I thought were really, really impactful. And yeah, very, very grateful for sharing. So what we're going to do now is go into the Q&A. Once again, please ask your questions in the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box, so that we can go through them. If you raise your hand, we will unmute you and allow you to speak, so that you can ask questions via audio. So Moshood Masha, I've unmuted you, and you can go ahead and speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khairan for the lectures, really great, and it's been a pleasure listening to you all throughout this.
Alhamdulillah. I don't know whether it's just me, but I can't hear you anymore.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. So it's a question, but it's a bit of a preamble there, so please bear with me. So a few years ago, while I was in uni, I attended a halakha, and I think we were talking about punishments for sins. And I asked about what the punishment for homosexuality was, and the guy who was leading it said, Basically speaking, it was death. And I said, well, I'd never seen any punishment stated clearly in the Quran. So I left it as that. A few days ago, I was reading through the BBC, and a lady had a vlog about her Ramadan experiences during the lockdown. So she was talking to a friend of hers, and it turned out that this friend was a gay gentleman. He was talking about how Ramadan was going to be for him during, the lockdown, and he was supposed to ideally last year would have gone for the gay iftar, but he couldn't do that. So this led me to read more stories about gay Muslims in the UK, for example. And one of the things one of the guys said was that homosexuality in itself is not a sin, and that the statement in the Quran wasn't really talking about homosexuality being a sin. It was about the chapter with regards to Prophet Lut, and that what was referenced was that it was the rape or the assault of men in Sodom and Gomorrah that was the sin, and therefore there's no sin in homosexuality. So this was a very important, especially now. And I'm sure if you've been or listened to the news, especially last year, there were a lot of protests with parents in Birmingham about the LGBTQ lessons and raising children in their environment, which makes it a lot more complicated. So my direct question was, what is the punishment for homosexuality or homosexual relations? And not just the punishment that Saudi Arabia says it is. And how do we navigate the world, especially with respect to children and its potential influence on them? Jazakallah khairan. Thank you.
Definitely. So, there are two things to look at in this question. The first part is homosexual intention or homosexual thoughts and homosexual acts. Okay, there's some people, it naturally occurs to them to have homosexual thoughts or feelings or inclinations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't punish people for thoughts that they fight, that they do not act upon, okay, that they try to battle. So from a religious perspective, homosexual inclination were natural homosexual inclination, as long as it's not acted upon, as long as it's restrained, is not punished. In fact, it's rewarded where you restrain yourself from doing such actions. The same way as if a man restrains himself from committing zina or any other sin, the person is rewarded for that restraint. So that's the first part. The second part on the punishment of homosexuality, you're right, there are no specific punishments for it in the Quran or from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What you have are some of the companions using their analogical deduction of, for example, what God did to the people of Lut, right? And because of that, they have then said, since God destroyed them, they use, they use the analogy to say that they should also be killed, essentially. But there's no specific from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says this is, that is clear and unambiguous. But there are differences of opinion from this among scholars. The key point to note here is it haram to, from an Islamic perspective, from what my understanding is from my teachers, is it haram for a man to have sex with a man or for a woman to have sex with a woman? Of course, unambiguously, clearly, yes, it is haram, right? What is the punishment for it? Wallahu a'lam, right? Scholars have many, and this is something where, if there's no clear, unambiguous, or nothing subject to questioning from the Quran or from the Sunnah, then it's left to the hands of scholars to sort of interpret or come to an agreement and come to an understanding. So for example, I am not at that level where I can come to that conclusion. But, the thoughts itself without acting upon it with restraint is in fact rewarded by God, because you've restrained yourself from doing something that's haram. The act itself is impermissible, right? What's the punishment for it? Allah knows best, right? There are many scholars with different opinions, but Allah knows best what it is. But, I always say to people, we should focus on, our focus should be on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't like the mindset of many of our Muslim brothers and sisters that they are harsh towards other people because they sin differently, You know, one of my friends used to say to me, don't hate me because I sin differently from you, right? All of us sin. And if we agree that we all commit sins and our sins are different, some of us commit major sins, some of us commit minor sins, some of us commit a combination of both, right? We shouldn't make the sins that we commit a means of us hating one another. Otherwise, there's no community, there's no society, right? Because if Allah were to expose all of our sins, then none of us will sit down with each other. I always like to remind people this, that in your house, just sit down with your family and then imagine the worst sins you've done. Literally, the worst things you've done. Most people, when they imagine this, immediately they look left, they actually start looking down because they think, oh my God, if any of these people around me were to know of these, I don't know how many of them will still hang around me, right? So when you recognize that's the nature of every single one of us, then you will be able to look at all other servants of God with Allah's mercy, with the eye of mercy, with the same way that God himself looks at them, which is that he doesn't call them to account for their sins immediately. He gives everybody time to reflect, repent, and come back to him. And he calls them back to him in the most gentle of ways. So, you know, I don't have an answer to what is the punishment, because I know it's something that has a difference of opinion from among scholars, from ranging from the most extreme capital punishment to just, you know, basically something that should deter that from being done in the next time, depending on how that's then looked at from a society perspective. Or you find some scholars over the years, they have just basically, like other sins, just turned a blind eye to it. But when I say turned a blind eye, not made it a point of punishment, but made it a point where they speak about it and just guide people towards words. Okay, so Allah knows best as to what that is. I hope I've, you know, tried my best in answering that question.
First, I want to look at the second bit.
Yes, I don't know. That's what I said. I don't know.
No, the second about the children.
Right. Oh, the children. Oh, yes. What do you do with children? So the same way you educate your children about what is right and what is wrong, tell them that, look, there are some people that have this inclination, right? That this natural inclination, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden it, right? And there are some people that have it, that's their natural, or that's the way they're naturally inclined to do it. So what do you do? What do you do with anybody that commits any sins? Just look at them with the eye of mercy from God, right? I don't like it where you make somebody else's shortcomings a means of defining them. That's not Allah's sunnah. Allah doesn't treat us based on the worst things we do or based on our sins. Allah looks at us, looks at all of our actions and finds the best of it and then ignores the rest. That's how Allah treats us, right? Allah says in the Quran, Allah says we'll reward those who are patient with the best of what they used to do. So if that's how Allah looks at us, he looks at the best in us and uses that to reward us, that's how we should look at others. So I don't tell my children or educate my children to look at others based on whether they believe in God or not, or whether they do certain things, and make that the criterion for dealing with them. No, deal with them the same way you would want God to deal with you. You would want God to deal with you with kindness, with love, with gentleness, right? So don't use someone's sins, right, or some people are struggling with as the criteria for dealing with them. And Allah knows best. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much. It's Karen. That's fine. Thanks.
Thank you for I think it's such a difficult thing to discuss in these times, but yeah, thank you for trying, Jubril. So I'll take a question from the Q&A. Assalamu alaikum. Regarding the priority of family members for zakat, as long as they fit the criteria, I'm confused about the criteria of opening the heart of the people towards Islam. I would rather give my money to Muslims than family members who abandon Islam. Can you please clarify that criteria? Thank you.
So that criteria of mu'allafat qulubuhum, those who their hearts are wanted to be joined to Islam. No, the first thing to note before I answer that question is we worship God the way he wants to be worshipped, not the way we think we should worship him. Okay? Islam is submission of our will to God's will. Okay? So if God has said, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبِهِمْ, if Allah has said sadaqah, which in this context is zakah, is for the poor people and for, and for the destitute, the poor people, and those people that work for the zakah, and the people that God is trying to join their hearts, or the Prophet Muhammad sees it as fit to join their hearts. This is something which a caliph or somebody who is equipped with the tools of knowing the background to what are these group of people, that's someone, someone who is knowledgeable in that area, basically. That's for them to judge. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He calls everybody to Him in different ways. Okay? Allah knows that He has some servants of His that if Allah were to test them with poverty, they would leave Him. So Allah, out of His generosity, He doesn't test these people with poverty so that their deen is secured. Allah knows that He has some servants that if He were to give them wealth, they would leave Allah. So He continues to test these people with poverty so that they would never, so Allah knows how best He deals with people. The people, mu'allafati qulubuhum, the people who their hearts are to be joined, it's a valid criteria set by Allah in the Quran. Right? And it has its purposes. It helps to join communities and bring communities together, right? And it helps, there's so many immense benefits of it. So for us as Muslims, our first priority is to submit to it and accept it because God has said it in the Quran. But there are, understand that God has a macro view, right, of what good is. God knows the future and then tells us to act. He knows the past, knows the future, and then tells us how we should live our present based on that complete knowledge. So if we don't understand it, then this is perhaps where faith comes into place. Knowing that, wait a minute, everything God has asked me to do so far, there has been good in it. So this part that I don't understand, let me learn more. I think that's the purpose behind this question. But mu'allafati qulubuhum, God knows that there's some people who, when you help them, when you give charity to them and when you help them, it brings their hearts closer to the person who is giving them these good things. If you see how many Muslims in many poor countries became Christians, is through missionary work, where the missionaries were literally just primarily helping these people, giving them food, giving them, so that's what zakat is for, right? Allah knows that there are some people that when they're poor, they would look at the hand that feeds them. And they'll go, wow, if these are the kind of people that are continuously giving us this good, then their hearts are softened towards those people. As Prophet Muhammad said, إِنَّ الْقُلُوبَ جُبِلَتْ عَلَى الْإِحْسَانِ مَنْ أَحْسَنَ إِلَيْهَا. Hearts are fashioned to show excellence to the one that shows excellence to them. Okay, so that's a valid category in zakat, and I hope Allah knows best.
Thank you. Actually, even for me, the idea that when you have peace, you leave, and it's only when you have hardship that you remember Allah, and just those different examples are actually really illuminating. So I have a hand up here. I'm going to allow you to talk. I can't see, it doesn't have a name, just a number, but if you had your hand up, I've unmuted you. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Eight 96034. No? Okay. I will put this person back. Okay. Next question in the box. Can one praise Allah Azza wa Jal in sujood with His beautiful names and attributes? Can one fast Monday to Thursday in appreciation of Allah?
You didn't pick before.
The first, so the person who is unmuted now is now able to speak.
Assalamu alaikum. I think it was a mistake.
Okay, because I heard the person speak just now. But
if you'd like to speak, raise your hand again, and I will unmute you.
So let's go back to that question.
Jubril, did you get?
I'll go to the question. Can one praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in sujood with His beautiful names and attributes? Of course you can. And it's, just praise Allah as much as you can, and call to Him as much as you can in your sujood. Some of the scholars say it's best to do this in nafila, but you can do it, inshallah, in both prayers, both nafila and fard, compulsory and extra prayers. Can one fast from Monday to Thursday in appreciation of Allah's favor? Yes, you can. You can do any act of worship to show gratitude. You can fast from Monday to Thursday. You can fast on Mondays and Thursdays. You can fast in the 3 middle days of the month. You know, the white days, they say. You know, you can fast. You can do any act of worship to show gratitude to God. There's another question here. I've never paid zakat before. Sorry, I can't hear you, Farida. Maybe I should.
My unstable.
If you want, I can pick up the questions one by one anyway. So let me pick up this question. If I've never paid zakat but involved in sadaqah, what can I do to correct this? Get your spreadsheet out. Make a calculation of what you've earned since you started earning money and what your what your income that you've earned is, and what the zakat of them, the amount that you kept for a year, what it would have been due to. And then once you've made that calculation, add some percentage on top of that and give it in zakat, and ask Allah to forgive your sins. You know, ask Allah to forgive your shortcomings. So zakat is a specific act of worship where you can only, like every act of worship that's compulsory, you have an intention that I intend to use this money for zakat. So if you've been paying charity without zakat, it doesn't count as zakat. Zakat is specific to the pillar of the religion. Okay, so the next question.
Okay, we had
hand raised.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we had another person with their hand up. If that. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, I would like to ask the 6. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Go ahead.
Hello? The 6th Shawwal, is it Sunnah or not?
Good question. So from the Maliki school of thought, when you say, the Prophet Muhammad said, whoever fasts from Ramadan وَاتَّبَعَهُ بِسِتٍ مِّن شَوَّالٍ, and follows the Ramadan with 6 fasts from Shawwal. Some of the scholars, the Maliki school, which is the school I follow, interprets that from, not 6 fasting in Shawwal. It says from Shawwal, meaning from the beginning of Shawwal till the next day extra after your 30 days or so, and you add 6 days from Shawwal till the next Sha'ban, then inshallah, if you do that, you would have the reward of someone that has fasted for the whole calendar year. Okay, so that's what is meant from the Maliki school of thought, that you just pick the fast from the month of Shawwal onwards, not really tied to it has to only be in the month of Shawwal, and Allah knows best. But yes, it's Sunnah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So back to the Q&A box. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakallah khairan for the lecture. Please, if I find myself closing my eyes to gain concentration while praying, is that okay?
Interesting question. This is the other thing about God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to, follow the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and asks us to worship him not as we want to worship him, but as he wants to be worshipped. Okay, it's very important to understand that, which means, you might feel, for example, I might feel that if I want to worship God, if I remove all my clothes and I'm only wearing my whatever it is, if I sit down, I feel more free, right? But that's not how God wants to be worshipped. God wants you to cover your aura and pray to him, right? So you have to understand that there is what God wants, right? And the essence of worship is when worshiping God, how God wants, not how we want. Back to the question of prayer. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he prayed, he opened his eyes and he looked to the ground in some of the riwayah, looked to the place he was going to put his head on, or he looked towards the Kaaba, right? So that's the perfect way to pray, and that is our role model. Anything other than that then you're following your own inclination. If you find that if you close your eyes, you'll concentrate a lot more, but God wants you to open your eyes and concentrate a lot more. That is, God wants you to, be present through opening your eyes, right? God doesn't want you to be present by closing your eyes. And there's a lot of wisdom in the kind of where, subhanAllah, our religion, there's so much hidden wisdom. Allah wants us to be sincere in worship. Yet, when it comes to the types of worship that has a lot of reward, he said, do it in congregation. So he wants sincerity in a congregation. You would have said, wait a minute. If sincerity is what is needed for worship, then I will be more sincere if I'm doing it alone. But Allah has said there's more reward in you doing something in a congregation. So would you say, because I'm more sincere when praying alone, I would prefer to pray alone than to pray in a congregation? No. Okay, so there's wisdom behind us opening our eyes. Allah wants you to be aware, to be focused, to be able to be present in the moment, and to be able to have real focus through your eyes being open and not necessarily through your eyes being closed. And if you take this ability, this is something that if you have, you will be able to have that same ability outside Salah, right? Whether it is when you're in a lecture, you don't want to close your eyes to focus in a lecture. No, you want to be able to focus on wherever he's speaking, So there, the best way to pray, to be brief, is to pray as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has prayed. If you find that you are not finding an optimal in your understanding of optimal in doing it that way, then you need to shift your understanding to understand that really what Allah wants you to get from prayer is not feelings. Allah doesn't want you to catch feelings from prayer. Allah wants you to remember him in prayer. And the best of remembrance is done in the way which his Prophet ﷺ has shown us when it comes to prayer. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. We should pray as he prayed, and he prayed opening his eyes.
Jazakallah khair. We'll take another audio question now. Alao, you can go ahead. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so if you are able to unmute, please just hold on. We'll take a question from. So, assalamu alaikum. Please, if you have a capital kept business, do you have to pay zakat on?
You have to. Me, I'm a small boy in business, so you have to define to me what you mean by capital kept business. But I would say, all these kind of fiqh questions is best that you ask a faqih. I'm still a small boy in fiqh. I'm still just revising some of my basic fiqh questions. So I would ask that you ask somebody who the experts in zakat. And I think Tahara, we know people who we can forward their questions to. You invited Alaja Toyin Kekere, she gave an excellent talk on zakat. So maybe you can help forward some of these questions to her. Is it Toyin or Toyin? I don't remember her name now.
I think after Ramadan, I'm trying to do something more finance focused, because we've gotten a lot of questions about investment and again about zakat. Inshallah, we'll host finance specific session moving forward. Hajia Hassan, I give you permission to speak if you'd like to ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum assalam wa
rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khairan to the lecturer. I wanted to ask, first he mentioned a book. I'm going to refer to a lecture he had earlier on today, and you mentioned a book, I can't remember, on I think Inner Workings of Salah. I can't remember the name.
The Inner Dimensions of Prayer. The Inner Dimensions of Prayer.
Oh, okay. Well, that's one. Then I want to ask a question on intention. You know how where it says that in Islam everything is judged by our intentions, and I'm trying to kind of correlate it with everyday actions. Like, okay, let me pick something as mundane. Like maybe I say, okay, okay, I'm taking care of my skin. I'm picking something as, you know, as very, sorry, maybe silly or something. How do you relate that with Allah, with intentions, with, you know, it seems like something that, okay, it's an everyday thing. It's not like, oh, I'm giving the cow, I'm giving sadaqah, or to, and have intention of, oh, Allah, I'm trying to seek your pleasure from doing this, but I've used something as very mundane.
So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said,
I'm just trying to use this so that.
So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, your body has a right over you, right? And understanding that, taking care of your body as it has a right over you, if you have the intention of obeying the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by taking care of your body, then you get rewards for it. You know, there's almost nothing you cannot be rewarded for. But the first thing to do, as I said, the intention is, if you make the intention that your whole life and your whole existence, that you want it to be in total and absolute service to God, right? You know, God will find ways to use you. And if you're, you know, whatever it is you do, he will just basically, he will be the one that will complete it for you, right? He will take over and he will use you in a way which he sees fit, right? And, you know, I always say to people, I look at my own personal story, right? Allah is my witness. When I started learning Arabic, I just wanted to really understand the Quran. I had no clue. If someone listed 100 things that I might do, right, after you know, after learning Arabic, teaching will not feature in the 100. So if you make God your goal, and I've been teaching Arabic since 2005, you know, and if you make God your goal, God will find the best way to use you, you know. And it doesn't necessarily mean you will end up in teaching or whatever, but he will use you and he will direct people that he wants to benefit from you with, you know, from you. Okay, so just make God your goal and leave the rest to him. Just make it your goal that you want to be totally submissive to God, and then watch what God does to people that have such intention towards him.
Jazakallah khairan. I hope that answers your question very much. We have so many questions in the Q&A box. We're running out of time, so we're going to try and filter and also go as fast as possible. So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan for this reminder. Could you please shed more light? There is this saying, marriages, the husband's money is family's money, but the wife's money is good money. I know Quran 4 verse 34 talks about the responsibility of the husband, but nowhere was it stated the woman is not supposed to contribute or that her contribution should be a gift.
This is just basic fiqh. If you learn the fiqh of marriage and divorce, which I encourage everybody, before you get married, go and sit down in front of a teacher, learn the fiqh of marriage and divorce, know what God requires the man to do, what God requires the woman to do, and then do your best, right? So God, from the fiqh of marriage, God requires the man to be able to take care of the wife's, where she lives, what she eats, and what she wears, okay? And in the Hanafi school, to the level of at least what she used to do before she married you, okay? So if you understand that, then you will know this is what God demands. Now, her wealth is her wealth. You know, before Jahiliyyah, in the time of Jahiliyyah, before Islam came, whenever you'd marry a woman, you owned everything that she had. But when Islam came, it said, no. Her money is her money, okay? And that's the basic Islamic, when you learn fiqh, you understand that. Now, the practical thing, for example, in 2020 in the West, is that many husbands cannot afford to maintain two adults, right? They can't afford it. They earn just enough to maintain themselves. So it will not work for them where they're the only ones paying to maintain the whole family. So that's where compromise comes into place, right? That, yes, if you understand that you are not able to fulfill this Islamic rights that the woman has, then at the very least, don't expect her to, fulfill every single thing as well. Compromise. So when she has to work as well to also fulfill the house you're living in, she has to work to help you maintain that house, then don't say to her, oh, you have to cook for us all the time. No, okay? So if you are not able to fulfill all your rights, then that's where compromise comes in, where you just find a middle ground. But I would say to people, if you are not able to, if you need fiqh to survive in marriage, then you already have a problem. Fiqh is like the boxing ropes, okay, in a boxing ring. A boxer who is already on the ropes is in trouble. They're meant to set the boundaries for your interaction. Your interaction should not need to get to the ropes. But as we're human, we know that we will have ropey time sometimes. The fiqh is there to let you know these are the boundaries of God. You should, as a spouse, you should be able to communicate effectively and openly and say, look, darling, I'm struggling money-wise. This is what I can afford. This is what I can bring to the table. And I'm not being, stingy, but this is it. And then any woman you speak to in a very, calm, open way and say, look, darling, I might need that we, both help out in some of these expenses. If you speak to your spouse like that, making it clear that it is her own right, her own wish, then most people will respond in an excellent way. So that's what I would say, that, excellent communication among spouses is key in attaining a balance and not always relying on fiqh. But from a fiqh perspective, yes, the man is responsible. That daraja that Allah has put on the men is darajatul infaq. الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. Allah says men are the maintainers and caretakers of women because Allah has put some over another and with what they spend of their wealth. Okay, that is, you are supposed to be the one responsible from a fiqh perspective, and Allah knows best. The second one is, no worries.
I want to take an audio question if you do. Thank you. So B, Masha, you are muted and you're welcome to speak. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khairan for all the sessions. I find that I take knowledge from wherever I find it and I don't follow a particular madhab. Am I being deficient by doing that? And if yes, how do I work to follow a particular madhab and not be taking knowledge from wherever I find it and stay consistent with one? Because I find that I say, I'm a Muslim first rather than I'm a Maliki or I'm a Hanafi or I'm a Hanbali and so forth.
That's a very good question. It's to give you a proper answer will take a bit more time, but may Allah help me in being brief. A school of thought are methods of extracting the truth from the Quran and from the Sunnah. There are different methodologies whereby you cannot, if you mix and match, you'll find that in many cases you'll be incorrect according to all of them. Okay, so for example, in the Shafi'i school, if you touch a woman like this, just any touch, it breaks your wudu. In the Maliki school, as long as you don't do it with desire, or you don't intend desire or find desire, it doesn't break your wudu. So if you decide to pray like the Shafi'i, right, and do wudu like the Maliki, then, according to the Shafi'i school, you might not even have prayer. So according to the Maliki school, you might, so the schools of thoughts are there as institutions, and mercy from God, institutions that God is, and it's not one school. A school is not one person. There are thousands of scholars who have used a methodology of deriving rulings from the Quran and Sunnah. So, and these are, many of the scholars over the years, 90-something% of them have adhered to one of these schools of thought. Only a very handful who have reached a level of what they call ijtihad, where they now, because of the depth of their knowledge, they are obliged to use their own knowledge as opposed to following a particular school of thought. And they're very handful, of scholars that have attained it. So what we should do is that we should follow one of these schools, at least in your 5 pillars. So in your aqidah, in your salah, in your zakah, in your hajj, and in your fasting, follow a school of thought. Outside of the 5 pillars, then, navigate those paths, as easier as possible. So for at least for the 5 pillars, my teachers say, follow a particular school of thought, and Allah knows best.
So sorry, how do you then make that choice? How do you work?
Practically speaking, you sit down in front of a teacher. I basically looked for a teacher that I said, oh, well, actually I was invited. I was invited to a class when I was in uni. I was told, okay, this teacher teaches Hanafi fiqh. And when he was teaching, I said, I'm Maliki, please. And he said, okay, don't worry, I'll tell you all of the differences. So you sit down with someone and you learn basic texts. So there are basic Maliki fiqh texts. I have some here, but okay, like Al-Akhdari, Al-Ashmawi, where you can sit down with someone and in 10 to 20 lessons, you learn the basics of the 5 pillars, right? So you sit down with a scholar. If you go to your local mosque, in many local mosques, many of the imams are able to teach this, So you learn the basic fiqh through a teacher, and they teach you what is compulsory regarding the fiqh of purification, and. So you learn all of this by sitting down in front of a teacher. In the absence of a teacher, there are many websites these days, Seeker's Guidance, for example. You can learn many of these basic fiqh from them, and there are many other, websites where you can learn the fiqh of your 5 pillars from sitting down and in the comfort of your own homes as well.
Great, thank you so much, Jubril. Sorry, we have so many questions. I want to try to ask as many people as possible. Is it haram to admire someone of the opposite sex you're not related to?
That you're not related to, it's normal to do that, but how do you act upon it, right? So to be attracted to somebody, that's normal. That means you're human, right? Because Allah has created in every one of us a desire for beauty. But how you act on that desire is what makes you either someone that obedient to God or disobedient to God. If you see that desire and you look, Muhammad said the first look is for you, but afterwards, calm down, don't, overlook. So the first look is for you, the second one is against you. And then, of course, how do you act upon it? If you're interested in the person and you're not married to the person and you want to marry the person, don't ever think that marriage is, if you've been married, you'll know this. Marriage is not all about that physical, interaction or that physical desire. There's a lot more to it than how pretty or how beautiful the person is or how beautiful the person looks. So yes, it's possible for you to be. The actual desire itself is not impermissible. It's how you act upon it, with whether or not you choose to act upon it, that makes it, impermissible or not. And Allah knows best.
Thank you. The next question is an Islamic finance question, so I'm just going to skip over it. Like I said, inshallah, we'll do some Islamic finance session. Dr. Alao says it is sin because you sin differently. I think that's important to reiterate. The next one is, Assalamu alaikum, am I expected to pay zakatul fitr on my help and driver or just my immediate family members and then
Allah, your helper, I think if you have a helper in the house who you're the one responsible for them, that might count as a dependent. If your driver, that's an employer who you just pay money to, that's different, who you pay for a particular service. Wallahu alam. So these questions, zakatul fitr is for your dependents, for your dependents. So, many scholars say these are your what's it called? Your children, and your spouse and your children. But some others say that anybody that maybe fully depends on you, then for example, people that they really depend on you for everything, then yes. So depending on which opinion you choose, if you choose the second opinion, which is every dependence, then yes, you pay zakatul fitr on their behalf as well. And Allah knows best.
Thank you. I'm going to take an audio question from Jan. You have permission to speak now. You can unmute your mic. Assalamu alaikum, Jamu.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Please go ahead with your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you very well.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay. I wanted to make a comment with respect to the woman that asked about taking care of her body and getting reward. I'm thinking that question is not clear. Maybe you'll have asked her that what does she mean by taking care of her body and eliciting reward therefrom. So that's my comment.
So taking care of her skin.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan. Do you get the question, Jubril?
Yeah. So yeah, she gave the example of taking care of her skin, and I said the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said your body has a right over you. So anything you do to give your body, to take care of your body, is something in advice. You're hearkening to the advice of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you do it with the intention of hearkening to his advice and listen to his advice, then inshallah you'll be rewarded.
Okay, great. I'll take another audio from Ruqayya. Permission to speak. Assalamu alaikum, Ruqayya. Okay, yeah, go ahead with your question.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My question is still about paying zakatul fitri. I'm a devout Muslim, but unfortunately my husband is a Christian. Well, I won't say I'm the breadwinner of the house, but that means automatically I'm the one to pay the zakatul fitri. So can I pay on the head of my husband, who is a Christian? That's my question. Assalam.
That is something you ask a faqih. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that. But you know, yeah, unfortunately, I don't know is the answer to that. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Assalamu alaikum. Is it backbiting to give a confidential, negative, but honest reference on somebody?
In the context of the fact that someone asked you for a reference where you have to then tell the truth about the person, because not to tell the truth will be basically lying in that case, and which is not, you know, so as long as you tell the truth without increase or decrease, then, you know, as long as you tell the truth and you're balanced in it. So for example, let's say the person has some good attributes and they have some not so good attributes, and you mention both in the spirit of fairness and being open and telling the truth, then, you know, that's what's required. And of course, this also is not just in giving references. Also, when someone comes to ask you about somebody for marriage, right? And they say, oh, what do you know about this girl or this brother for marriage, right? You have to tell the truth, right? In this case, there's no such thing. He's my paddy, he's my friend. I have to. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one woman came to him and asked about three men that proposed to her. He said, this one, don't marry him because he's stingy. Said, this one, don't marry him because he beats women. And this one, he's righteous, marry him. Right? So you can see, he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned some of the sins of these people in the context that if he didn't mention it, he would be hiding knowledge, which would have, if she told him, if he said, oh, they're all nice Muslims, mashallah, and then he went to marry the wife beater, you know what, that would have been misguidance. So references, in the context of reference, you know, you have to tell the truth. You know, you have to say what is right, and don't increase and don't decrease. Okay, and Allah knows best, and that's not ghiba.
So much. I'm just going to take one more because it's already 6 o'clock. I'm sorry to miss your question, but I'll take this one. Jazakallah khairan for this session. So my question is about courtship in Islam. Like you're in a situation where a proposal has been accepted, but the brother does not have a job yet. Is this a sin? How do you maintain communication before you have a nikah conducted? Like your parents need him to be financially stable. So I think essentially there's courtship. The parents have not given consent because the gentleman in question is not financially stable. So how do they maintain communication until such a time when it's satisfactory for them?
The first comment I will say is, in my opinion and the opinion of my teachers, we should, as Muslims, make marriage so easy. Allah has made it easy. The Prophet Muhammad has made it easy. When I go to, one of the reasons I love going to places like Senegal and Mauritania, they've made marriage so easy, right? You know, I was speaking to a sister the other day, she's there studying, I said, oh, I got married the other day. I was like, oh, okay. You know, they make marriage so easy. Why? Because Allah has made it easy. Okay? We shouldn't wait until someone earns XYZ before we say you can get married. If you do that, you're making the religion difficult for people, right? We live in a world where almost every teenager has a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Why don't you then allow your own children to have a nikah, right? Why don't you say, okay, you're 18, whatever it is, you're going to university, rather than you know, if you already know that you like someone, you really like them, have a nikah and wait for the walima, for as long as you want. But at least anything they do amongst each other is no longer haram because you've done a nikah, right? So we've attached so much cultural baggage to what marriage is that we think it has to be like Hollywood style or Bollywood style. So, and because of that, we're pushing people to sin, right? Marriage is there to facilitate, to bring us all together, not to place unnecessary burdens. So that's the first thing. The next thing is, if you happen to now be in that difficult position where your parents have not allowed you to do a nikah sooner, okay, then just don't be alone together, okay? That's what I will just say. Whatever you meet, just don't be alone in a room together to the best of your ability and ask Allah for help. Whenever you're going to meet, let the person come to your house with your siblings around or with your family around, or you can go to their house with their siblings around or with their family around them, or you meet in a public space and talk. But I will say to such a people, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Al-ajalatu min ash-shaytan illa fi thalath." That haste is from Satan except in three things. And one of those things is when two people love each other for the sake of God, just get them married for God's sake. Okay, just do your nikah and then leave all the
I think one of the things that, if you can actually stress this, because I think one of the things culturally is that we have this grandiose understanding of what the nikah should be, and I think that's part of what even the idea of the living arrangement of the couple after the nikah. So the idea that you're not having a nikah until you guys in the house and you're moving out and all these things. Can you just stress a little bit, like just minimize the concept?
Nikah is 5 minutes. Literally, the nikah is 5 minutes. You establish that the person has proposed a qabul, al-arab, a proposal, and then you establish that the girl has said, yeah, I'm interested, I want to marry this person. And you find two witnesses, right? Two male saying witnesses. You find two witnesses, and then you show that both of you have agreed that there is a dowry, right? And of course, the acceptance of the girl can be through her and or delegated through her wali, right? And once you establish that all of these things are there, then you just pray that God, someone officiates and witnesses this, and of course there are two witnesses as well. Once you establish that, then that's it, right? It's a 5-10 minute. I've been in nikah in Senegal. 10 minutes is done, right? And we as a community, rather than making our children fall into haram, if somebody comes to you and says, I'm in love with someone, just help them navigate those waters and say, look, have you truly vetted this person in the sense that you really think they have the conditions and the tools that will be able to treat you well and they'll be able to honor you? And once you've helped them navigate that and you help them become their mirror or their, to really help them ascertain that what they feel is not just, wishy-washy, but there's something there, then just make it easy for them to get married, right? Just do the nikah. And once the nikah is done, then if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it's not a big deal. It's not a bad thing. And this is the other thing. When you learn the fiqh of divorce properly, you will learn that if divorce is haram or a bad thing, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would never have divorced. And of course, he divorced, right? That's one thing many people don't even realize. So if divorce was evil or wrong, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wouldn't have done it. Sorry, Sidi Taslim, I'm very verbose sometimes. I will try and be.
No problem. So we want to ask you guys an extra 10 minutes is the last minute. Let's just push through another 10 minutes.
So in essence, divorce is not the end of the world, and marriage is not the be and end all. These are things that Allah has made permissible, both of them, both marriage and divorce, to facilitate human interaction, to make it easy for us to really get to be close and learn and benefit from one another. Okay, so we shouldn't feel as if, oh, what would I do if it doesn't work out? What's my life going to be? No, there's life after divorce, right? And at the same time, you shouldn't feel as if, oh, if I'm not married, I'm not, I'm incomplete. Life is great. No, there's life before and after marriage. So khair, that's when you learn the fiqh from good teachers, you'll be able to really taste what this institute is supposed to be about, right? As opposed to all the cultural baggages that come with it.
Thank you so much. So we'll just take a couple more questions. Since we're going to push the time a tiny bit more, I'm going to filter through them because some things with finance and things I'm going to filter through. Assalamu alaikum, what's the position of music in Islam, in particular mainstream music? You can keep your response brief, please.
Difference of opinion. Some say permissible, some say it's okay. So difference of opinion among scholars. And when there's a difference of opinion, you have your choice, whichever one you want to follow in that. I always just say to people, you know yourself more than others, right? You know the effect anything has on your heart. If you find something distracts you from God and from worship of God, then keep away from it, even if many people say it's okay. And you find that something has zero effect or zero impact because your connection with God is so strong, then your choice whether you choose to take it or not. Allah knows best.
Thank you. I've been told that it's wrong to pray for long life. Is this true?
No, it's not true.
Thank you. Can my normal fast Monday and Thursdays count as part of the 6th of Shawwal?
Yes, it can.
Okay. If I have property, do I pay zakat on property every year?
Ask a zakat scholar. You
Okay.
pay zakat
So
on
that's on
the income from that property, not the value of the property. I remember that I learned that from the last Tahara session. So you pay.
Yes, actually.
So you pay zakat on the rent you get from the property, not on the value of the property. And Allah knows best.
Okay, so we've spoken about the madhabs already. So how can one go about learning the Quran and Islam more? It's a bit of a broad question.
No, it's fine. First, ask Allah for it. And I always say to people, when the student is ready, Allah will bring teachers to you and Allah will give you access to teachers. So ask Allah for it genuinely and seek out teachers. And when you seek out teachers, look for teachers with excellent manners, and look for teachers that you would want your children to grow up to be like. Look for teachers who are soft, like the Prophet Muhammad was soft and gentle with people. And inshallah, ask Allah for help and guidance and Allah will help and guide you.
Thank you. Is dating allowed in Islam? What does it entail?
As I said, dating is allowed because what does dating entail? You see someone you want to get married to, you ask them, you basically find out from them, through speaking to them first, through finding out about people that are close to them, find out whether there is really something in that for both of you, right? Whether there's a real relationship that you can have with this person, how much, what are the goals you share together? I always say to people, think of marriage like you're both on a ship, right? You're both on a boat, right? What's the first most important thing when you get on a boat to someone? Where are we going, right? Are you heading in the same direction? If you're both heading in the same direction, it makes everything else easier. Then what do you both have? What are your understandings of being in a boat? Are these together as well? And then afterwards, once those two key things are there, you both understand what a marriage is supposed to be, what that institution is supposed to be. Are you both heading in the same direction? Do you have the same goals? Of course, you're going to go at different pace. Once you know these, then if you feel that, yes, this person is pleasing to you from a beauty perspective, from a religious perspective, then just do your nikah and don't dwell too much on it. Don't, that's what dating entails. My teachers always say that, within 1 to 3 months max, you will already know whether there's something to build on. And once you know that, you can do a nikah and wait to then get to know the person even more. And then when you then see that, okay, yeah, fine, and then do a walima at some point in the future. So my teachers, especially in the UK, one of my teachers, he says that for him, with his daughters, he will just, if they come and say they really like this person or whatever it is, he interviews them, finds out whether that person is really, what they say they are. If he thinks they're good, he said, fine, tell me when you want to do your nikah, right? When they want to do the nikah, give it 1 year before you do your walima. So in that 1 year, they're free to now interact. They can still live apart, but now anything that happens between them is halal, right? And if at that point she feels, actually, it doesn't work, then she can say, no, I don't really want to marry this guy. And if it works, then we do a walima, we celebrate it, and live for 112 months.
You're blowing the minds of Yoruba people on this forum right now. What do you mean? Have a car and not have a party? So that's great. Thank you. Does Tahara plan to start halal, seeing as members from many parts of the world? We're just creating a community, and inshallah, find themselves within that community, but we're not, creating like a Minder app or anything like that. No. Thank you for asking. Assalamu alaikum. Is snapping pictures haram?
Is taking pictures haram? No, not according to the things I've learned from no.
Okay, we are not taking any zakat questions because, as Jubril said, we'll ask a faqih. But is family planning permissible in Islam?
Yes.
You want to expatiate on the parameters of permissibility?
Family planning is permissible from an Islamic perspective, from the view that some of the companions practice coitus interruptus, essentially. So because of that, Muhammad didn't forbid them from doing it, but he told them, look, whatever Allah wills will happen anyway, but he didn't forbid them from doing it. Based on that, scholars accept that you can, use condoms, or you can use any any family planning initiative, as long as it doesn't harm you, right? As long as it is clearly not. So for example, other than for medical reasons, you're not allowed to say, oh, I'm going to tie up my womb, for example, or I'm going to castrate myself, for example. Okay, so vasectomy and tying up the womb, other than for medical reasons, because there are some medical reasons where you have to do that. Other than for that, it's not permissible. But generally speaking, coitus interruptus or any types of family planning is permissible. Allah knows best, as long as it doesn't harm.
Great, thank you. Two more questions, which will give us just enough time. So, assalamu alaikum, what's the Islamic ruling on Muslim women marrying non-Muslim, especially in this day and age where it's increasingly difficult finding Muslim suitors? I had an interesting conversation with my friends the other day about how a lot of people, even when they do marry a Muslim, it's just so they can have a nikah. You don't have any spiritual relationship, or you don't have Islam as really marriage. So I thought that was a really interesting question.
It's quite clear in the Quran, from the text of the Quran, it's not permissible for a Muslim woman to marry a non-Muslim man. That's from the Quran, and the many hadith also, support this. So in the Quran it says, "La hunna hillun lahum." They will never be permissible for them, meaning the non-Muslims. "Wa la hum yahilluna lahun," and they are not permissible for them. So what you find is that yes, so that's the straight answer. What do you do if you were to, how do I say this? One, we shouldn't see marriage as the end all. Okay, you being unmarried doesn't make you deficient. Okay, it's the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that if you are able to do, you should do. If you're not able to do, you should be patient and fast, as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has advised. Okay, but we should understand that from a marriage, from a fiqh perspective, no, it's not permissible. And if you, at this day and age, yes, when I look around, many people that I've met in the UK, in Nigeria, they say, where are the good men? Where are the whatever it is? I say, brothers, the people attending the call, brothers, help, try to practice your religion to the best of your ability. Try to refine yourselves. Try to be good. Try to be gentle to our sisters. Try to, really be Muhammadan. Be like our prophet, how he was to his women, right? And, a personal opinion based on, what I've seen from my teachers is that as Muslims, we need to really embrace the institutions of marriage that Allah has made permissible. And one of such is polygamy, right? And if we as a nation cannot embrace this, and we're all in the nafsi mentality, myself, I can't let my husband, then where is the ummah mentality? Like, oh my God, we have a nation where there are less men than women, numbers wise. Okay, if everybody said my husband, my husband, my husband, then where is the sunnah of polygamy going to be? So this is and that's another topic for another day maybe. But the reality is, this is something that we should not say because you're not finding a righteous Muslim man. That I would say, if you don't find a righteous Muslim man, do not necessarily marry a non-righteous Muslim man. Okay, don't say because you've not found the only thing worse than being single is being married to the wrong person. Okay, then if you don't, then be patient and just at least have your connection with God, and God will find his ways. If God has written marriage for you, it will come to you, and if he hasn't written it for you, then God is still God.
Thank you. So this one, really briefly, Assalamu alaikum, is watching animations and cartoons allowed?
Yes, of course it depends on the contents of this. If you watch animation and cartoons where they're, the other day, the person that hijacked our session, those kind of animations are no. As long as it's this is the realm of mubah, things which are permissible that Allah has and His Messenger has not necessarily dictated on them, and as long as they don't distract you from Allah, khalas, it's in the realm of mubah, and Allah knows best.
Great, thank you. I really did not want this session to come to an end because it carries so much meaning. But alhamdulillah, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your knowledge, for just being also very kind and understanding with everyone and our varying journeys. I think this has been an incredibly impactful Ramadan for a lot of us, being able to learn through this medium, being able to connect, making new friends is fantastic. So I want to thank you, first of all, in a worldly way, and then pray for you that Allah, elevates you to heights beyond which any of us can imagine, and accepts every second you spent with us and as an act of ibadah, and accepts everything that you pray and want for yourself. We are to you, to everyone that spoke to us about zakat, spoke to us about just everything to strengthen our relationship with Allah and with the deen. We're grateful to all the speakers that joined us this Ramadan. We're grateful to every single person who dialed into our Zoom calls. We're very grateful for you sharing even this content with people. And just alhamdulillah, it's been a fantastic Ramadan. Please make dua for us in the Tahara Collective. We have really, really big plans, really big dreams. And we really just want to create a very loving and comforting Muslim community where we can come together, learn, and just be the very best Muslims that we can be. Thank you to everyone who contributed to our COVID relief. We literally reached thousands of families across the country, and we are so, so grateful for everyone that contributed. Alhamdulillah, I just think it was amazing. I can't believe it's almost Maghrib and Ramadan is coming to a close, but thank you so much. Jubril, can you just give us dua to close out the session? And then, you can also contact us, taharacollective@gmail.com, and on our social media @Tahara Collective, if you want to know anything about the organization and becoming part of our little family. So Jubril, take it.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين سيد الأولين والآخرين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مباركا مرحوما، وجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما، ولا تجعل بيننا ولا معنا شقيا ولا محروما. آتنا ولا تحرمنا، زدنا ولا تنقصنا، كلنا ولا تكن علينا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم تقبل صلاتنا وصيامنا وقيامنا وركوعنا وسجودنا وتوبتنا وكل عباداتنا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اجعل عباداتنا كلها خالصة لوجهك الكريم. اللهم اجعل توبتنا إليك توبة نصوحة لا رجوع إلى الخطايا يا عزيز يا غفار. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اغفر لنا وارحمنا، أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله.
Inshallah, we'll continue doing sessions after Ramadan. We're just going to take a little break for like a week, and then we'll, come back to give you guys more sessions. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jubril. And assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Mubarak, everyone. Mubarak.